Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to take a slightly different tack on the conversations that you've heard so far. So I come from an infrastructure company. We sell servers and storage and networking to organizations around the world. And we see the trend that people want to move as much of their infrastructure out of the data center into the cloud and consume IT as a service and whatever guise that's going to take. So I'm just going to talk about what we're seeing and kind of some of the challenges that we see organizations facing and how hopefully we can help them address that. So this is a slide that many of you might have seen. It's a simple 5-step migration from your simple on-premise delivery of service to cloud. And this slide has been delivered by many people in many guises, the same 5 steps. But to me, the big change is that last bit on the end. When it started off 2 years ago, that was just cloud. But now when we look forward, we see that this delivery mechanism is going to change, and it has to change to allow people to harness the most of what they've got. And it's going to a whole world of converged cloud or hybrid delivery of services to an organization. So, this all looks nice and simple and straightforward, and what you've got in your data center is this bit on the left-hand side, the first 3 on the left-hand side, where we're looking at virtualisation and consolidation and reducing the number of applications that you have to try and simplify the delivery of service to the business. But when you talk to an IT manager, this is what they see, okay? Down on the left-hand side, they've got TIN, they've got applications, they've got management tools, they've got networks, and all of this has to be hooked together to help the business drive forward and thrive, okay? The most important thing then is they're spending most of their time actually just managing stuff, okay? They're managing the applications, and they're making sure all the stuff is spinning, and they're making sure that the users are online at all time, because anytime there's downtime, well, there's hell to pay, and it impacts the business going forward. So from that simple 5-step strategy, from where they are, there's a huge gap that they need to get through. They can see the cloud. They can see the benefits of the cloud. They can see bits that they can put into the cloud. But what are those? How do they do it? How do they manage it? So instead of having a nice, simple ladder with 5 rungs, they now have a big gap between rung 1 and rung 5. And how are they going to get there? So from HP's perspective, we see hybrid delivery as being a mechanism for them to be able to harness it and fill in some of those gaps. Because when we look at legacy organizations, they have their own applications. They probably built them, they've tweaked them, they've designed them. They can't simply just uplift it and move it. They have to run it for a period of time and hopefully migrate it across. But there's other stuff within their organization that's simple to move. So why can't they do that? But if they do that, how do they manage it all? Okay? So with hybrid delivery, they can make the choices that's most appropriate to them. And that's what HP are focusing on to try and address this. So we've seen lots of figures around cloud, and we see cloud in its entirety, from everything from traditional IT right the way through to private cloud, managed cloud, on into public cloud. It's the broad spectrum of how services are delivered to organizations going forward. But the other thing we've seen is that people are looking for more out of it. They're not going to go all one way or all another. Now they're looking at how they can consume the service in the most appropriate place, okay? How they deliver to the organization to get best benefit, and most importantly, just get the business to thrive. Because if the business thrives, they keep the jobs and everyone's happy. The other thing we're seeing a bit of a shift in is there's a large range of people out there who've made their living selling infrastructure to organizations, whether they be servers or storage or network or application or whatever it might be. And as cloud adoption accelerates, their little part of the pie starts to deplete. But these organizations have a lot of skills. They can help people design infrastructures. They can help people look at applications and deploy them. They can help them migrate from old workload to new workload. So when they're dealing on the street with a business, they have a lot of intel around it. And now they realize that they can use this intel to their own benefit and help help customers migrate from their traditional on-premise to a mix of IT as a service, from on-premise infrastructure right the way through to cloud delivery of services. So we're seeing channel partners now actually either investing in their own infrastructure to drive a cloud service for their customers, or leveraging other cloud infrastructures, relabeling it as their own, and provisioning it out to customers. So when I was putting these slides together, I thought, okay, what are the blockers? And when I saw this slide initially, I kind of thought, this is out of date. These are the same blockers that we've seen for cloud adoption for the last 4 or 5 years. security, compliance. What data can I put up in the cloud? Once it is up in the cloud, can I get it back? Once I get it back, what can I do with it then? When it is in the cloud, am I compliant in relation to the auditors when they land on, based on the industry that I operate in? But for me, the important one is this whole idea of openness. As Paolo said, what happens when you have to reverse back out? How do I do it? Where do I put it? If I want to move from one cloud provider to another cloud provider, how easy is it to do? Or am I just re-engineering everything again just to move the provider? And this is the big concern, is the whole idea of vendor lock-in, okay? But the other aspect that I suppose was touched on is this whole idea that there's a huge amount of infrastructure that people have invested in, a huge amount of applications that people have designed and built that's out there, that's driving businesses forward, that's helping them deliver services to their customers. And how do we leverage that? They're not simply just going to go and flick the switch and walk away and leave it there. So all of this needs to be taken into consideration as organizations look at their roadmap to the cloud, or how they want to deliver services to their business and their organization. So, when they look at driving this roadmap, what they need to do is, what's the outcome? What do they want to achieve by looking at cloud? What benefits can cloud bring to their organization so they can service their customers and grow as an organization? What are the key considerations then around the workload, the applications they have? What kind of performance do they require? What kind of service level availability do they require from the services that they put out there? And then that leads on to individually looking at each of the applications that are within their organization. How important are they? How much time have they invested in developing that application to suit their organization's requirements? Can they simply just go and buy one off the shelf? And if they can, grand. Well, then we look at a new application and roll that out across the organization. But there's many organizations out there that have existing applications that just can't be done. They've had 20 years of just developing code on top of a base platform, and that's what's helped them drive their business forward. So there's going to be a mix of new and existing applications going forward. And when they've made those decisions, then what happens to the infrastructure? Can we put it all out there? Or do we need to keep stuff on premise? And that's where we come with the whole idea of, do we build and operate, or do we consume? And from our perspective, you do both. Because there's no right or wrong answer. Each organization is different. They have their own metrics, they have their own requirements. And what you need to do is balance all that to suit yourselves. So from HP's perspective, the way I like to look at this is, traditional IT is still there and will be still there for a number of years to come. But why should it be siloed off? When we look at private cloud, we're looking at deploying infrastructure with the appropriate automation and deployment tools that we can spin up and spin down resource. We can build internally or externally if we need to. With managed cloud, you've got someone else hosting it for you, but it's dedicated to you. And then you got public cloud. And when we look at this, essentially these are separate islands. But what we want to do is we want to just have a single framework that all of this can be managed together. Build an interconnector between traditional IT and private cloud and public cloud, so that effectively IT then just sit on top of all of this. And as requests come into IT for new services or new applications, they simply look at the pools below them and decide which is the most appropriate place to put that. Based on commercials, security, or the service level availability that the business requires. But that takes an awful lot of work from those business and IT to sit together to work out what applications they need, how important those applications are, and the most appropriate place for those applications to go. But the other thing we need to bear in mind is that cloud is a very big part, but it's still only a part of the broad spectrum of things that actually IT need to look at. Users today want information at their fingertips. Okay? They want it quick, they want it cheap, and they want it in a nice, easy format to read. The business want to drive forward. They want to start harnessing the information that's sitting out there in social media. They want to be able to have fast analytics of the data that they have at hand. So really what IT is, they need to look at cloud, and cloud forms a part that may deliver some of these big data solutions or mobile solutions. And most importantly, you need the security wrapper around the whole thing to make sure that they're compliant and that they're leaving themselves exposed at a later date. Okay? So the one thing we need to be very careful of is this is effectively what an IT organization was looking at about 4 or 5 years ago. They'd servers, they'd storage, they'd network, they'd security, they'd management tools, and they were running around trying to keep these things spinning to keep the business going, okay? And they were spending 70% of their time just keeping the stuff going and 30% of their time innovating. And gradually we've been changing that ratio, where they can actually spend more time innovating and less time actually just keeping the lights on. But if we're not careful on how we look at it, and if we're not careful on how we look at the adoption of cloud, we're simply going to replace this with this. We're going to have infrastructure as a service out there, we're going to have platform or software as a service, we're going to have big data platform, we'll have some internal IT solutions. So, you know, while we've moved on, we're consuming as a service, we're still putting the burden back on IT to try and manage all of this, because at the moment, all of these are managed as separate silos of IT, okay? So from HP's perspective, what we see is we need an open standards approach to cloud. And we believe that open source technology can help us get there, okay? So if we look at a couple of pieces of research that have been carried out over the last couple of years. So in 2016, this is where we see IT being delivered from. So while private IT or internal IT accounts for a big portion of it, we can see that the majority of the services are going to be external to the organization. And how does that affect IT and how they deliver service to the business itself? And as you can see below, nearly 50% of organizations are going to be consuming services from multiples of these areas. Okay? So how does the IT organization manage it? And one of the scary things a lot of IT organizations are looking at today is there is a shadow IT out there, where people have just used a credit card to go and buy services because it was too difficult to get to the IT department to deliver it for you. And that lack of control scares an awful lot of IT departments. The other thing then is the whole world of OpenStack. Okay, so OpenStack is the fastest growing community-based distribution out there at the moment, and they're looking purely at cloud technology. Okay, and based on information from October of last year, we can see where OpenStack is being used within cloud deployments. Okay, and we see OpenStack as being this standards-based approach to help ease the migration from traditional IT on into private cloud, to help organizations avoid lock-in as they go forward. So if we look back a little bit, you know, we've seen what Linux has done for x86 server compute. We've seen what Android has done to the mobile market and how they're changing the way things go forward. When we look at the internet, and we see then the prevalence of open source technology in relation to the delivery of services within the internet, from operating systems to the web servers, server-side language, and content management, okay? They prevail in many of these cases. So we all know the drivers for open source, and it's a combination of both cost and technology and balancing all of those. And as the previous speaker said, when we look at cloud, it's all about scale, okay? And we'll have organizations, and all they do is focus on getting the best out of the platform that they've spun up to deliver services to their customers. So when we look at the concerns, they have an army of people addressing each of these concerns around open source technology, the lack of support, you know, the ecosystem, the security around it, and the integration, all right? But when I talk to organizations, they have their own internal IT environment. Generally, it's a small number of people looking after an awful lot of applications to help drive the business going forward, okay? They don't have the skills in open source technology. There's a risk factor that they're just not willing to take on. And while they can see the benefits of open source, it's the risks that's stopping them from actually harnessing it. So when we look at OpenStack, so OpenStack is the fastest growing community out there at the moment. Over 130 countries, 13,000 individual members, okay? And is a very active format out there at the moment. You know, they're continually developing. Generally, they have 2 releases a year in relation to the code. It's made up of about 30 to 40 different projects, all addressing different aspects of cloud and internet delivery of services. But it's not just individuals who are behind this. Global organizations are seeing the benefit of this open source technology, okay? HP itself were one of the founding members in relation to OpenStack, and one of the biggest contributors to OpenStack itself, okay? And we see that by getting momentum behind this, that we can have that open standards approach to cloud. and helping customers avoid the lock-in as they go forward. So this is HP's kind of cloud portfolio. So whether you're looking to deploy in private cloud, managed cloud, or into the public cloud, what we want to do is deliver you a framework. And we see OpenStack as being the foundation for that. And by having OpenStack as the foundation, we can make your workloads portable across different cloud providers, okay? Make it manageable so you don't have these silos of IT, and more importantly, scalable as you grow. So what we're doing is we're taking the information that's out there within the OpenStack foundation, okay? We see the benefits, we look at the projects that are out there, we see the ones that are more mature. Then we take those and we test them, and we test them, and we test them, and we harden them, and we make sure they're secure. And then we test them again, and then we make sure that they're supportable. So what we're doing now is we've released this HP Cloud OS. And with HP Cloud OS, what we're doing is we're taking these more mature aspects of the OpenStack foundation and then being able to roll them out to enterprises. Because as I said before, enterprises generally don't have the skills, the time, or the resources to start going off and hardening these themselves. That's why they go and they talk to people like Microsoft and Red Hat, because they have a whole support ecosystem around the applications that are deployed. So what we're doing with the HP Cloud OS is taking the OpenStack code, providing the services wrapper around it, make sure it's fully supportable, and make sure it's easier for the organizations to manage as they go forward. Okay? So when we go back to this whole idea of build and operate and consume, we don't see these as being two completely separate islands. Okay? Effectively, what we're providing organizations with is a continuum of management and supportability going forward. So irrelevant of if they're using traditional cloud, private cloud, or on into the public cloud, they have an architecture, which all of this is based on to give them that portability and scalability and flexibility as their organization evolves. Because what they're doing today is going to be very different from what they do in 3 or 4 years' time. Okay? The other thing about HP is that, many organizations, whether they be small or large, they all know where they want to get to, but they don't know how to do it. Okay? And when we talk about using open source technology and open standards technology, what they need to do is be reassured that this is the right choice for them. How do they do it? And if they do decide to go down this road, can we help them through that whole process? And by taking this code, hardening it, and then wrapping all the services around it, we believe that we can ease this migration from the way we're doing it today or yesterday into the way they want to do things tomorrow. The other thing that we need to be very wary of at the moment is that, relevant to whether we're doing stuff in the data center, or whether we want to do stuff in the cloud, or whether we want to look at the software-defined data center, the network is the one thing that holds all of this together. And the network is the one thing that, at the moment, is a very manual piece of work. Anytime we want to make a change within a network, we spend an awful lot of time managing devices or managing network stacks. Generally, it's managed by a CLI. If you want to make a change, you have to do multiple things in sequence of each other. And this is kind of slowing down the adoption of cloud and slowing down the ability for businesses to actually roll out applications within their organization. So along with OpenStack, we're seeing another open source technology coming from the Open Network Foundation, a thing called software-defined networking, or OpenFlow. And with OpenFlow, what we're looking at is technology that we can embed within the networking stack. And what we're trying to get to is that when we're looking to make a change within the network, we can simply go to effectively an app store for the network, download a configuration that we need, and then push it out to all of the devices. So we centralize the whole management of the network within the organization, and then just push policies down as we go forward. So by combining both what the OpenStack code is doing and what we're doing within the Open Network Foundation, these two technologies together will help simplify the environment and also drive efficiencies and make it easier for organizations to move into the cloud. So really, to sum up, organizations are looking for a new way to deliver. They don't want to replace the traditional silos of server, storage, network, okay, with a new set of silos in infrastructure, software, platform as a service, okay? They're effectively looking for a menu that they can select from, but not have to manage these all independent of each other, okay? By leveraging these open source technologies and open standards technologies, really what we want to do is give choice to the organizations. a consistency of delivery, irrelevant of where that service is being delivered from, and the ability then to move that workload or that service from on-premise to hybrid or into public cloud if needs be. Okay? We want to help customers and organizations get a clear strategy around what they're trying to achieve. And once they have a clear strategy, then we can help them put the framework together. And from us, that framework and that foundation is all around open standards technologies. And OpenStack is allowing us to do it. So when we have this standards-based approach, we can give portability, remove the blockers in relation to lock-in, and hopefully then help them drive better efficiencies with delivering infrastructure, software, or IT as a service to the organization. I hope you found that useful. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.